Welcome. My name is Ben Hartley. I'm the Executive Director at the National Arts Club, and we're so happy today to be co-presenting our program with our friends at The Observer. Special thanks to Michael Rose and Editorial Director Mary Von Owie at The Observer for their continued support and enthusiastic collaboration. We have multiple hundreds of people around the world right now ready to hear our two experts talking about the future of live theatre. For those of you who don't know the National Arts Club, we're a 501c3, we're a non-profit. When we're open, we're on leafy Gramercy Park in downtown Manhattan. We have over 150 free programs a year. 40,000 people come and see those programs. When we're back, when we're open, we'd love to have you all join us. Before then, well, until then, join us online. We do a lot of programs during the week. And we put them on our YouTube channel as well. When thinking about this program, The Future of Theatre, it made me reflect on some of the productions I've seen recently in New York City. The brilliant restaging of West Side Story on Broadway by director Eva Van Hove, Medea at the Brooklyn Academy of Music with Rose Byrne and Bobby Carnevale, and a great production of Hamlet by the Gage Theatre of Dublin at Snan's Warehouse. All of those theatrical performances featured tight-backed audiences, ensemble casts, and flying respiratory airborne bits of virus. Maybe not. Anyway, it made me think, gosh, where do we go next? Fortunately, we have two great experts today ready to talk to us about where we go next in live theatre. Those experts are David Cote, playwright, librettist, and distinguished theatre critic for The Observer. David will be joined by Joe Benincasa. He's the CEO and president of the Actors Fund. The Actors Fund, if you don't know it, is a wonderful organization with offices in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, a nursing home in New Jersey, and assisted housing in 3 other locations. If you don't know the Actors Fund, it's a terrific organization doing so much for the entertainment and performing arts industry. Without further ado, I'd love to send it over to David and Joe to tell us about the future of live theatre. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. I should have said earlier too, it's Cody, often mispronounced and misspelled. Joe, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Delighted to be with you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, most of what I see as a critic and as a reporter, of course, comes via my contacts, but you know, of course, press releases. I mean, the news comes to me in the form of like, this theater is live streaming this show, or these theaters are commissioning micro plays for a program called Play at Home. You know, all the various initiatives that institutions are doing. Whereas you're seeing on the ground level what actors and other theater artists are dealing with. I just wanted to ask first off, like, what are the most common things that people are coming to the Actors Fund for right now?
Well, you know, the Actors Fund was founded in 1882, a long time ago, and the term actor is a little anachronistic. In 1882, everyone was an actor. So we serve everyone in the creative community working in the performing arts and entertainment: writers, stagehands, directors, ushers, and actors. About 90% of the people we help are actors. Last year, that was about 23,000 people across the country. What we're seeing now is a dramatic need for direct financial assistance. We've already provided about just under $13 million in direct financial assistance to people working in the performing arts and entertainment community. And that's going to continue. Our new challenge that we're embracing right now through our healthcare services is helping people keep or secure health insurance. Under the Affordable Care Act, we're healthcare navigators and counselors, and we've been in that arena for a long time, since the late 90s when we opened up a free healthcare center. We now operate a primary healthcare center in Times Square with Mount Sinai. But we are expanding our counseling services right now because so many people are losing their health insurance. You know, you were and are an actor, David. Okay, so you know that you have to earn X number of weeks or hours to qualify for the union or guild's health plan, and people just aren't working, and they're not working enough to earn those credits. And beyond that, we have something at the Actors Fund called the Career Center. It's a great organization. We help people in the arts develop parallel or second careers. Now we're helping people get work in the COVID economy. And that's very interesting. You know, and we've had to convert, you know, all of our fundraising, you know, back in April, we had a New York City gala, reunion performance of Ragtime with the original stars, except for the dearly departed and beloved Marin Mazzie. We're going to do a big fundraiser. It was sold out. We've had to postpone that to the fall. And who knows, we may be on Zoom doing that or doing it against a paywall, the way we were doing so many of our events every night. Literally, we are so impressed at how the creative community has stepped up to help the Actors Fund, understanding that people need financial assistance, they need help in health insurance, they need to understand where they can go for work. We're so impressed at how creative people have been. You know, Rosie O'Donnell kicked things off for us with reinventing her Rosie O'Donnell show with a big Sunday evening broadcast. Seth Rudetsky and his husband, James Wesley, have every night they're inviting, you know, people onto their show called Stars in the House to help the Actors Fund. And Jeffrey Richards and David Mamet and everybody has come together. So literally every night you can contribute to the Actors Fund.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You're sort of pointing to the fact that that even though people can't obviously congregate in theaters at the moment, there's quite a lot of activity out there. I mean, people aren't just simply sitting on their hands. In addition to those events, there was, of course, the Sondheim 90th birthday celebration, which was absolutely wonderful. You have, sorry, I'm just looking at my computer here for some notes here. You have, like I said before, like there was a consortium of theaters, including Woolly Mammoth and Kennedy Center in DC, that commissioned about 100 micro plays from playwrights to be performed at home. The 24-hour plays are doing viral monologues every week where they commission playwrights, and well, they don't, I mean, I say commission, but I don't think money's not actually changing hands. People are doing a lot of things for free these days. The Homebound Project, also similar. It's a lot of monologues by well-known actors, and the money is going to charity. It's going to a program, I don't know the name offhand, but it's to help children who are not getting enough food. So it's a very worthy cause. The Arena Stage in DC just put together a bunch of series of monologues. They filmed them based on interviews with real people, nurses, people in their community. So I just wanted to say all that to sort of bring up a question. And I know that you're with Actors Fund, not the Broadway League, but there has been some worry that the Broadway League is not communicating enough with the public. You know, like what's going on? When are theaters going to open again? Who's in charge? What would you say to that? If, you know, to the criticisms?
I think and I'm in contact, you know, with Charlotte St. Martin and all the leaders of the league, Tom Schumacher, the chairman, and Lauren Reed, the vice chair. You know, so I'm in contact virtually every day, and you may feel that they're not communicating because things keep on evolving. I mean, just early this morning, we had a conversation about, plans that they're developing to sanitize the theaters, use the blue light inside the theaters overnight. But things are evolving so much. I mean, it wasn't 3 months ago, we thought we'd be back in business on Broadway in June. Now we're looking at next year. And that's a challenge. So I think that I know the Broadway League is being very cautious, and they don't want to, put out, information that, may not be correct. So I think they're being cautious, and I think they should be cautious.
Yeah. It seems like that seems to be the consensus among people that when our show is going to happen again, maybe in 2021. I mean, just today, Cameron McIntosh put out a statement, right? Or was it yesterday or today, that his productions, Mary Poppins, Phantom of the Opera, and Hamilton won't be performing again until next year.
That's right. Yeah, it could be January, it could be February, more likely March. And again, I run a human service organization, not a producer. I was a Tony voter. I served on the Tony Administration Committee. But I'm not a theater owner or a producer. I run a human service organization. So when I look at things, and I look at people losing health insurance, I say to myself, that's a problem we're going to have next year because people will not have worked enough to earn the credits they need to have health insurance. So, we're looking at, for my planning purposes at the Actors Fund, I'm thinking March, we'll be back in business. But who knows what's going to happen in a second wave? Who knows how this virus is mutating? We're in contact with, scientists, and Mount Sinai being our partner in the healthcare, center in Times Square. We're closely looking at everything. So what's terrible is that we just don't know. We know that we don't know an awful lot about this virus. And every doctor I talk to, whether at our healthcare center, at our nursing home, or in Los Angeles, at UCLA, what they keep on saying is there's so much we don't know about this virus.
I wanted to ask a question about jobs that are out there. I mean, you were saying obviously thousands and thousands of actors are out of work right now. Are you aware of many performers who have been able to find work in TV or movie or ads, even though there is a situation still happening?
Yeah, people are getting work. They're doing commercials. They're doing a lot of voiceover work, from their padded closets or whatever. So people, actors are incredibly resourceful, and they're getting work. And it's not the kind of work they want, and doesn't pay as much as they were earning, but they are getting work. And look, you were talking about those regional theaters. I'm on the board of Theater Communications Group, and my colleagues around the country, the Geffen Playhouse, it's hard to get a ticket for the present. And that's a live streaming show every night. I think house seats are $100 or something like that just to get a house seat to go. At the Writers Theater in Glencoe, Illinois, the Kate Lupuma did a production of Into the Woods. She didn't make money on it, but she paid her actors, and paid all the rights on it. So there's a lot of interesting things happening online. It's not the same, but people are finding work, not at the same level. I think film and television is something different. And now that work rules have been approved, they're going to cautiously move back into production. And that will be exciting. But who knows? Let's hope it doesn't start and then halt.
Well, it seems like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so what we have to be cautious and careful. And I hate to say it, I'm kind of assuming the worst, okay?
That there might be another wave and another shutdown, or,
I might. And when you think about, the Actors Fund, and I've been running the Actors Fund for a little more than 30 years. And before that, I, managed public affairs at the New York Blood Center, the largest blood center in the world. So I remember the AIDS epidemic, and we created, a whole AIDS initiative at the Actors Fund, at the Blood Center. Before that, we developed the Western blot test for testing. I'm reminded that today we don't have a vaccine for HIV and AIDS. We have wonderful PrEP programs to help people combat HIV, but we don't have a vaccine. And I think we're all worried about, we know all my friends at at various pharmaceutical companies who are all racing to get the vaccine. But I think it's going to take time to test, and hope we don't rush out a vaccine that proves harmful, to people.
Yeah, once that silver bullet, is invented, it's going to take months and months for the I would assume the production of it and the distribution of it to happen.
Yeah, I think it will. But again, we could get the e-ticket and ride our way into real success. But having said that, I know that the theaters are preparing themselves. The deep cleaning that's been going on. I know they're going to be out. They're going to be pulling out all the sets in July. So there's a lot of interesting protocols that the theaters are already putting in place to protect the stagehands who are moving stuff out of the theaters, protecting the people who are who are cleaning the theaters, etc. So I think that as resourceful as the industry is, and David, it's always been, dying. The theater has always been disappearing. People have predicted its demise many, many times and in many, many ways. I think it's going to come back strong, and it's going to come back very innovatively, differently. But I think people will feel safe. And I think that's the important, that's the important thing that people have to feel, is safety going into the theater, safety going through the entryways. So it will be very interesting to see what happens, but I'm very confident that we're gonna figure it out.
There was a picture a few weeks ago. I mean, when I say a few weeks ago, time is a very fungible thing right now. Of, I think it was the Berliner Ensemble in Germany, and they had socially distanced their seating, so the seats were very spaced out from each other, 6 feet, I suppose. Do you know of any theaters that are considering doing that with their seating?
I think every theater that I know of is thinking about doing that. Yeah, I co-founded back in college, my college days, the George Street Playhouse down in New Brunswick, and we're looking, and I'm still involved, and we're looking at distancing, and we built a brand new theater. We're housing 4 theaters in this glorious building that the Actors Fund has apartments above, affordable housing for artists above it, down in New Brunswick. Yeah, so Crossroads Theater, the Mason Gross School of Arts at Rutgers University, the Princeton Repertory Dance Company, it's got a different name now. We're all looking at all these different configurations for this brand new, beautiful theater. But we're still haven't made any decisions about exactly what to do yet.
Because obviously that would affect revenue. I mean, it would decimate revenue, it seems, from box office,
Yeah, it would decimate revenue, but we'll find different ways of streaming it. It'll be, again, I don't know. What I do know is that they're thinking about different ways of keeping the revenue relatively high. I can't imagine that they're going to have a high price ticket as they restart theater. My guess, and I haven't heard this from anyone, okay, in the theater business, but my guess is that the tickets will be affordable to get people in the habit of coming back to theater. And maybe the physical distancing inside the theater will have 25, 50% of the possible audience. But again, people may feel so confident that the deep cleaning, the checks that are being done as people come in, will make people more confident. And I think we'll look to the governor in New York and Gavin Newsom in California and Pritzker in Illinois to help us figure, I guess, what's appropriate. And what I do know, David, is that there are high-level discussions at the governor's levels about what's safe and what's to do. I'm involved with a minor league baseball team in Bridgewater, New Jersey, the Somerset Patriots, and we're facing the same challenges. Not like Major League Baseball, which may or may not have a season. We'll probably have a short season, and maybe 25% of those 6,000 seats will be filled. But it will be baseball, and it will be somehow live streamed probably. And we're not going to, make as much money as we could have with our $6 and $8 tickets. It's a minor league team, but it will. Our goal is to make it safe, for the players as well as the people in the stands, and as well as the people working the concessions, and all over the place.
I know that probably if you were to ask 20 artistic directors of theaters whether they are excited by the prospect of becoming multimedia producers, i.e. producing content for online consumption, the majority of them might say no, that's not what I got into this business for. But if things continue in this way, and there has to be more content out there, there's already a great deal of content, as we've discussed. I guess my question is, what are your thoughts about how that hybrid form of TV and live theater might evolve? I personally, not to answer the question for you, but I personally am excited by the idea that, let's say, 50 well-funded theaters in this town are putting out lots of exciting content, and that people could subscribe to it the way they subscribe to Hulu, in a way that they never could when theater was physically happening. I.e., you can't pay $50 and then go to any theater in this town. So I mean, I just wanted to throw that out there and see what you think about the evolution of the form.
If I were a Broadway producer or an artistic director, mean, I would pursue that hybrid. Our friends, Bonnie Comley and Stuart Lane created Broadway HD. They have 5,000 titles in their portfolio. Really terrific work for a modest subscription. And I got to tell you, it's the most popular channel at our home in Englewood, New Jersey, for our seniors, because they often see themselves in the productions that they're watching, at the home. And I think that's an idea that should be pursued, and I think it is being considered and pursued. When you think about Legally Blonde a few years ago, and how MTV did a production, and I think they broadcast it 4 times. I look at things that are on Showtime. When we did, about 5 weeks ago, Bob Greenblatt, who is now chairman of Warner Media, he and Neil Marin put together, we did 5 years ago, we did a sold out performance of the show within Smash called Bombshell. And it had a crazy following. It was terrific. We had to put a lottery up because in 24 hours we were sold out. And it was just crazy. What we did was we took that live stream and got permission from the unions to do a broadcast. Renee Zellweger introduced it. And surprise, surprise, the next day, Neil Marin, and Bob Greenblatt announced that it was coming to Broadway next year. Okay, it had such a crazy following. It was up on the people.com platform. We had 3 million viewers, looking at this live stream, which is amazing. So I think there's something I'd like to think there's a hybrid, but there's nothing compares with live theater. The experience of being with other people near a stage, watching performers sing and dance and talk. I mean, nothing beats that. And that's why this art form has been around for so long. But out of necessity, there may have to be, some kind of a interesting hybrid.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioning the fan base for Smash and Bombshell, because that's becoming, in recent years, it's become more of a thing where a viral sensation like Be More Chill, makes its way to off-Broadway and then to Broadway, based partly on the intense fan appreciation of the cast album. So it's interesting how it's sort of a marketing tool, obviously, online broadcasts, but I don't know what my question was. It's definitely a thing. Theater is getting out to more people than ever before, than ever could fit into a theater, it seems.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, you could be very geeky about it. I mean, what you said about the live experience, of course. I mean, I'm terribly missing going over all those thresholds. The threshold of the theater, and in a sense, in a more symbolic way, the threshold of the suspension of disbelief, and just in the leaving and the discussing afterwards. It's all the live experience. One could be completely geeky about it and think, like, what if virtual reality technology had advanced as quickly as like smartphone technology in the past 10 years? I mean, is that just sort of dystopian or interesting, like sitting at home with a headset where you're with your friends at the theater and you can zoom into the action, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, there are young producers who have experimented with that. Let's see, Sammy, I forget her last name now, Dory Bernstein's daughter, created a ragtime performance at Ellis Island in which you put the goggles on and you experienced everything. So I think, and I think it's very interesting. I think things are changing. I think the art form is changing. One thing that will never change, though, is the live experience of being in a baseball stadium and watching baseball players hit the ball and catch the ball and throw the ball, etc. And the same thing is true for theater. People will want to be in theater, close to the action, appreciating the action, knowing that it's slightly different every day, and what they see tonight, may change tomorrow night. So I think theater's got a great future, and entertainment will take various forms. I mean, who could have thought? Look at Netflix. Look at all of these different, broadcast companies right now. It's interesting. It wasn't long ago we had 3 or 4 stations to watch on television, and you had to program your night or your week to watch something. Now it's all out there, and so I think it's an exciting time to be in the arts and to be in the performing arts and entertainment.
The thing that's of course come up during this whole pandemic is the worldwide outrage over the killing of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests that have happened around the country and around the world. And the knock-on effect of that has been a lot of theater institutions putting out statements, arts and cultural institutions in general and others putting out statements in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, and some going further to talk about how they're examining themselves to see how they may be complicit in a prejudicial and racist power structure. Every organization is different, of course. So there's this thought as well that's going around that when theater starts up again, it's going to have to address these issues of social inequality, historical racism, systemic racism. It's a delicate issue to talk about it, and it's what form it would take. Does this simply mean that more artists of color would be produced? Does it mean that more artists of color or people of color would be invited to be on boards? Who knows what will happen? But I want to just throw that out there. What do you think about this current political moment in terms of theater?
I think it's long overdue. We have embraced that uncomfortable conversation. As a progressive as I'd like to think I am and have been, and our organization has been, we haven't done enough. If you're white, you're somehow complicit, and I think that's true. That's the way I feel. We've had a very active diversity, equality, and inclusion program at the Actors Fund, and we still haven't quite done enough. We're fortunate. Someone who's helped us a great deal over 16 years is our board chairman, Brian Stokes Mitchell. And I think of another trustee like Kenny Leon, and David White, African, who runs SAG-AFTRA, is the CEO there. They've helped us over the years to better understand issues of race and how it affects organizations, how it affects film, television, and theater. I think it's long overdue. And as uncomfortable as our discussions are at the staff level, and at our board level, we have to have those conversations and advance the organization. So for me, the murders, police brutality have been around for a long time. And I think we have to understand it, embrace it, work toward reform. I think many of us will be working various lanes to getting to greater social justice in our world. I'll be running in one or two lanes, others are going to be running in a different lane. But we have to keep our pedal to the metal and keep advancing this campaign for greater social justice for Blacks, for brown people, and for other people who have been disproportionately hurt by society. Listen, I'm Italian American. My mother immigrated from Sicily. My father's first generation orphan in this country from Italy as well. They had tough lives, but nothing like the 400 years that Blacks have had in this country. And Friday will be June 10th and 10th, and we'll be celebrating that at the Actors Fund. It's going to be, it's an interesting time. It's a hopeful time. I think when I talk to Kenny Leon, who's on our nominating committee, and we're careful looking at governance and moving things forward, he's hopeful, and he's experienced great, discrimination. He's successful as a director, but he's hopeful. Our chairman, Brian Stokes Mitchell, starred in Ragtime, played a terrorist in Ragtime. And I remember the kind of notes he was getting from different audiences, about his role and about the character in the Dr. O book. He's hopeful. We do know that hope is not enough. We've got to combine hope with good work and action and understanding. And I'd like to think that everyone at the Actors Fund, on our board, and all of our committees, all of our stakeholders, and all of our staff, that we're embracing the uncomfortable moment and we're also mourning for the people who have been murdered. You know, and I think this is a moment in time. When I mentioned that I'm Italian, and I'm a member of the Columbus Club, I've been honored by the Italian Welfare League. Lots of friends who are Italian. I'm not unhappy that the statues of Christopher Columbus, and this is going to probably get me in trouble, and maybe they'll rescind my membership in those clubs. But I'm not unhappy. Last year at the Actors Fund, we decided not to celebrate Columbus Day, but we celebrated a holiday celebrating Native peoples in the continent. So I'm not unhappy about the changes in society right now.
Yeah, no.
And it's kind of strange, isn't it, that people who fought against the Union, we erected statues in their honor. I mean, that's something I never. I mean, I love Richmond, Virginia, but I always thought it was strange that you'd be celebrating these treasonous people.
Well, as historians have pointed out, a lot of these statues were erected during the Jim Crow era, and they were, talk about state-sponsored terrorism. They were in a sense symbols of the Confederacy, obviously, and they were symbols of white supremacy. And don't feel too free, because we're always here watching you, in a sense.
Yeah, and this country is always seeking a more perfect union, as so often is said, and we have these fits and starts, and hopefully this is a restart. I mean, we think back, and I'm old enough to remember the 60s. I graduated from college in 1972. When I think of Lyndon Baines Johnson, the Vietnam War was terrible and a mistake. But the Great Society was a great idea. The Civil Rights Act being enacted, Medicaid being enacted, Medicare. These were all great advances for our society. And hopefully, when my father was orphaned in this country, he always used to say that Franklin Delano Roosevelt saved his life, because he got work with the Works Progress Administration on the Chicago waterfront, ended up in northern New York working for the Civilian Conservation Corps and learning how to be a barber. And those were great opportunities for an immigrant who barely spoke English and was in the middle of a depression. So I think those opportunities exist with the right kind of leadership in Washington and in the state level. So I'd like to think that this is a good opportunity for the whole country to advance.
I agree. I mean, it's a time for big structural changes and big thinking. I mean, without getting too political here, I feel part of the anger I think people feel about the last 3 years, if they're angry, and everybody's angry, aren't they? Regardless, is that I feel like there's just been such a lot of wasted time. It's been a lot of wasted time.
Yeah, a lot. I agree, and we go by fits and starts, and hopefully this is a big restart for the whole country and the world. I mean, what we're seeing in this country is not unlike what we're seeing in other parts of the world. So,
yeah,
I'm hopeful. We're hopeful.
I feel hopeful too.
Do what we can.
I like to think that theater critics are frustrated, not frustrated artists necessarily, but frustrated artistic directors, because we want to be not all of us, I'm generalizing, but tastemakers, or we want to we have to have some belief in our own taste, right? So I'm kind of interested in this period, and I know that theaters are just trying to get by and they may have to furlough employees, or they have to do more fundraising, or they have to get PPP loans from the government and all that. But I wonder, I hope in my own way that there's some ways that the theaters are reaching out to their audiences. And I mean, I assume that they're staying in touch with their donors and their subscribers. I'd love to see this as an opportunity for, and this may sound sort of granular, but for literary managers and dramaturgs at various theaters to do more about educating their audiences. That sounds a bit condescending, but educate them in terms of like new playwriting, what new playwrights are doing. Because I came out of the off-Broadway scene and the experimental scene, and I think it's healthy when theaters program more difficult work. I don't want to say difficult, but like for example, at Playwrights Horizons, which has had wonderful seasons lately, they've had Annie Baker's The Flick, which is a play set in a cinema in Massachusetts. It was very slow and very durational in many ways. And some audiences complained to Tim Sanford, and he had to write letters to explain why he thought this is an important play. I wish that didn't have to happen. I'm sorry this is a long question, but I guess I'll just throw it out there. What do you think about that? Like, is this a time to work on audiences, whatever that might mean?
One thing that I find with myself, and I think it's true in theater, because I think there's greater communication between artistic directors and the theaters with their donor base. I see a lot more communication. As much as at the, at 11 o'clock at night, I don't want to look at a Zoom or make a Zoom call again. But the level of interaction, I think, is significant. I feel it within our organization, with our 360 employees. I know everyone a lot better than I knew them 4 months ago, because I see them a lot more, and we have this contact. And when I talk to artistic directors, I'm thinking about like Michael Rosenberg, who was at La Jolla and is now down at McCarter Theater, and the stuff that Emily Mann was doing and the new artistic director were doing. They're really engaging their board and their supporters in discussions, about new work. And I see that all over the country. Gil Cates Jr. at the Geffen Playhouse, my friend Kate Lupuma at the Writers Theater, Rock over at Goodman. I think there's a lot more communication. A part of it is out of necessity. We still need your support. We're going to have a virtual gala. Please don't give us less than you gave us last year for a table or whatever. But I think there's a level of discussion about the art form which has increased. And I think that's all good. And I think it is educating stakeholders more. I mean, at the George Street Playhouse, Eric Krebs was our leader. I remember Eric in the 70s was very experimental in the work that he did. And I remember I even didn't subscribe one year because I didn't like the season he was put together. But boy, he was really pushing us hard to appreciate a broad, all kinds of theater. I rejoined the next year and have kept my subscription up. But it's I think we all have to be pushed a little bit to embrace art. And Playwrights Horizons, Tim's done it, they're doing such a great job in bringing new work over many, many years to the forefront. So I think it's being done all over the country. So I'm hopeful, that there's going to be a greater understanding, greater communication among between art directors with their art directors is the right word, but with the theaters,
artistic directors, yeah.
Artistic directors, okay, with their with supporters and their stakeholders. I think it's good. I don't want to sound too Pollyannish in this call, but I think it's good, and I think greater communication.
Yeah, and I'm sure even long before this situation arrived, people were already thinking about how can we bring new people in. That's always the issue. How do we bring new, younger people into the theater and establish that loyalty? In a sense.
It'll be interesting to see what's on stage on Broadway in 5 years. It'll be interesting. We know that Hamilton will be there, but what else? What will populate the other theaters?
Well, Frozen won't. That's for sure. Unfortunately.
No. But it'll be interesting to see what moves up. What moves up.
I don't know if it's too early. Should I go to some questions here? We have like 3 questions or statements. Well, I'll try this here. From anonymous attendee. It is clear from audience surveys, Shugal Research, Dylan Schneider, Wolf Brown, that audiences will not be comfortable returning to the theater unless we are vaccinated. Theaters may be able to open in phase 4, but only socially distanced. This is more of a statement, I think. A socially distanced theater means about 12% of seats, which is not financially viable. Well, that was a statement, really. Yeah. Well, we sort of talked about that. It's a huge hit to the box office, obviously.
Yeah, it'll be a huge hit to the box office, but I don't have I think that person is probably right. Will that change in next month's survey? As greater confidence in how theaters are cleaned and what happens. Will that change? It's possible. but I think that's a very realistic and accurate, you know, assessment of where we are in theater in next year.
There's another just a comment here saying, you know, I suppose it's in regards to or in reference to people who are affected, not just actors, David, but stagehands, costume makers, ushers, box office staff, janitors, house managers, wig makers, dressers, musicians. Yeah, of course, it takes a village with every single production. I think that I saw the statistic from last year from the Broadway League, and that's just Broadway, of course, that are about 96,000, nearly 97,000 jobs in a season on Broadway. So that's not just actors, that's lots and lots of people.
No, and that's where that's where our organization comes in, because all of those people you've just mentioned all have come to the Actors Fund for help, and getting direct financial assistance out is part of that help, helping them get into different careers, parallel careers, secondary careers, complementary careers, helping them keep their health insurance is incredibly important. And so it's a big challenge. We think about the stagehand. So
it's I mean, this is probably too reductive, but I guess I'll ask it anyway. Say you're an actor or a stagehand or a stage manager, and you want to find a different career. Is there some place that actors like gravitate towards?
I think that, you know, a good place to go is to actorsfund.org. Go to the Career Center. It's just one click away on our website. And we have a variety of webinars, seminars, some group counseling, and real direction provided, you know, by our staff there about where to go. Do you want to be a contact tracer? You know, we'll help you get there. And that can be a good gig, you know, with salary starting at 60 grand a year, you know, for however long.
I know an actor who's doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are opportunities there. Hey, listen, we've all done different things, and actors more than others, you know, do different things and are very resourceful. It's rare that an actor can earn his or her living, you know, solely as being an actor. That's, to use my baseball analogy again, that's Major League Baseball. That's making it to the leagues and knowing that you retire by the time you're 35, and that you're going to have to do something else after baseball for the most part. So actors, dancers, people in the arts are incredibly resourceful, and they have to be.
We have a question here. What are your thoughts about Zoom productions?
Yeah, I think the Zoom productions are kind of in their infancy right now. And I think that I was making the presentation to Bloomberg Philanthropies, and I guess they've gone through 3 iterations of Zoom technology, and now they're using the WebEx technology and stuff like that. So, you know, my good friends Seth Rudetsky and James Wesley, they've gone through various iterations for their show every night, which benefits the Actors Fund. So I think that the technology, I don't know about you, but it seems every 2 days I get an upgrade on my Zoom, you know, account. Mm-hmm. So I think that it will get better and better and better and easier to use. So I think it's in its infancy right now.
Yeah. I would add, maybe it's an obvious thing to say, but whether it's on Zoom or it's been taped on a person's camera, which is often very high quality and good audio, I watched a fair amount of theater, both the monologues and just full productions on like NT Live or other things, and you know, even though sometimes the production values can vary, I think that there's something beyond the live experience of theater. I do think that there's something really special about seeing theatrical material on even on your laptop, because it reminds you that theater can be very visual, of course, and very much about movement, but theater is also very much about language and knowing that we're going to sit here for 5-10 minutes or an hour and we're going to like absorb something. So I think that even if unless it looks terrible on the Zoom, I think it has magic still, you know?
Yeah, and we go back to the 19th century when, actors did their own makeup, and I know a lot of people who still do their own makeup and prefer doing it themselves, and they know, how to look good in a live setup, how to look good on Zoom. I look at our chairman at the Actors and Brian Stokes Mitchell. Every time he does something, he did the Lincoln Center in Memoriam program on Sunday. Every time I see him on Zoom, he looks better and better. Okay, so he's mastering the technology. And again, it's people in show business are so resourceful. They adapt and they figure out how to get it done. And theater critics do too, David. So I just want you to know we've had theater critics living in our residences, and you're more than welcome to come. You might get a few notes when you come in the door from a few of the actors there, but that'll dissipate.
Just no spaghetti on the head, please. The infamous John Simon episode. Sorry. Let's see, what else? What are the questions here? What can theaters learn from the airline industry protocols, testing passengers before they would enter the theater? This is interesting. Like, what if you test the actors and the stagehands and everyone's negative, and couldn't they just go into a rehearsal room or go onto a stage and act? And I guess they're asking that about the audience members, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I'm not sure. I would guess from what I've heard from everybody is that you'll be testing at the door. And I'm thinking of baseball too. I'm thinking about music venues. I'm involved with the Grammys, and you're thinking about all that testing will take place, I think at the door. There'll be questionnaires. There'll be lots of, the scary thing about the coronavirus is that you can be asymptomatic for 2 weeks before symptoms are shown, and I think that's what worries everybody the most, is that you could have a normal temperature, you could have no symptoms, and you can still infect someone. And I think that is a challenge. But the protocols, deep cleaning, that's going to be a level of assurance for audience goers, stagehands. Listen, at the Actors Fund Nursing Home in Englewood, New Jersey, we're testing twice a week, and we're COVID-free for 9-10 weeks now, and which is great. And we run a great shop, and we have a great administrator there. But it's testing twice a week, and it's doing contact tracing as well. Where was this nurse a week ago? Did you know anyone who contracted the virus who you were in contact with? So contact tracing is incredibly important, together with testing at the door. How you do that at the door, going into a theater to someone who's bought a ticket to see Hamilton, to be determined.
Yeah, without it being the line being longer than the show,
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned the airplane. I think we have a lot to learn from the hotel industry and the airplane and the airlines. They've been doing deep cleaning of planes right now. Everyone I talk to is flying, and I have to comment here that United Airlines is a sponsor of the Actors Fund. So, but having said that, from what I understand from my friends at United and at American, boy, the airplanes have never been cleaner. Masks are being worn. They're doing some physical spacing so that riding in economy is a treat. It's almost like riding first class with that middle seat empty now. So I think the proof's going to be in the pudding. We'll wait and see what happens in the next month or two. But I think there's progress made. Hotels are going to be really interesting. And I think how the hotel industry goes, how airlines go, how baseball goes, how Major League Sports go, will be kind of a bellwether to how the theater community goes.
Here's a question. Let me see. I'm just checking to see how many we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. About 10 more minutes here. I guess we could. This is interesting. What would you say to your child who's in college studying technical theater right now?
Yeah, I would say stay with it. I think the training that you in the technical field, I think, is so terrific. The crafts related to entertainment. Bob Greenblatt, a good friend who's chairman of Warner Media, has a master's in fine arts, and went to a theater program at Northwestern, I think. So I think the training, the discipline that you learn in the technical, learning technical crafts are great. And it's all about discipline. It's all about communication. And so I would stick with it.
Yeah, and by the time they graduate, things might be radically improved.
That's right.
Sorry. I think I'm just trying to. Francisco asks example of hybrid production / live streaming similar to the Metropolitan Opera did some 20 years ago. It took a few years. I guess they're referring to what the Metropolitan Opera is doing right now. Yes, that's been going on for at least a decade or so, hasn't it? It took a few years, but it succeeded. This person says, yeah. I mean, those productions are amazing.
Oh, they are amazing. Yeah. And I'm not the only one that's gone to Lincoln Center Square to watch a show or Central. I remember in college, coming up from Philadelphia and going to Central Park. I mean, seeing James Earl Jones and anyway, I had great experiences in the open air watching productions, and watching opera. I really, I'm not an opera. I don't know opera well. I like 2 or 3 times a year going to opera. I really used to love going to the Ziegfeld Theater once a year to watch opera, and watching the backstage discussion. And we've done productions. We've shown opera at our home and our nursing home in Englewood, New Jersey, where we've had the nice break, and it's wonderful. So I think that
but for Broadway to sort of institute a kind of, what am I trying to say? To create a sort of infrastructure in order for really excellent high def camera work to capture performance and broadcast. I mean, it has happened, of course. And you can see them on Broadway HD, of course. But I mean, if that were a regular thing, like if virtually every production on Broadway could be seen in a cinema, that would be something.
I think that would be something, and I know people are talking about it and thinking about it. Certainly, the technology exists. When you watch the Tonys are great to be at in person because it's great. But watching it on television is exciting. Because the White Cherry, what they've done is they've taken a show from Times Square and marched it into Radio City Music Hall. The technology they use to make it a very vibrant experience is terrific. So we know it's the ability and the technology is there, and it's unlimited. I'm very confident that the people involved in theater and in television and film, that they all know one another quite well. They all work well together. They're different disciplines, but they will create something which we have not seen yet, which will be the next big thing and a good thing. And yes, I'm confident. So I think the hybrid. I mean, we see it now. We see and I think of the Tony Awards. I mean, I think of Hugh Jackman coming in on a pogo stick from wherever into Radio City Music Hall and the side production. You think of a lot. You see a lot of interesting work being done.
The challenge, of course, is it's hard enough to make live theater profitable, but to make streaming theater and to make these hybrid things profitable is, of course, that's the puzzle that nobody's quite worked out yet, I guess.
Yeah.
Although maybe Broadway HD has, because Broadway HD is an aggregator of all these past and recent productions.
Yeah.
How do you make money off of it?
I think that's how do you make money? I think I really applaud Stuart and Bonnie because they have, they have invested their time and their talent, to make it work, and they're taking the long view of it. And maybe their time has come right now, so that it does start turning a bigger profit. And I don't know if it makes a profit or not. I'm guessing that it's kind of a break-even enterprise for them right now, but it could be bigger.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Somebody says they're asking, what about the installation of a UVC disinfection device in the theater? A correctly designed system appears to provide a high level of disinfection in seconds. I believe the CDC has approved such a device in the TB wards. Yeah, sorry, that's it.
Yeah, no, they have, and I've been reading a lot about it. We've all been reading a great deal about it, and it's being used in all kinds of outdoor venues as well. And there's high hopes for it. So I think there's high hopes. What I hear about it mostly from my friends in the stagehands unions, you know, who know a lot about it. So they're very high on it.
Mm-hmm. And just the last question here is simply, what about the orchestra? I know a violinist who plays in the pits in various shows, and she jokes about how it's a germ bomb down there, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I think when I think of the pit, I think on stage, I think of actors being close to one another. I think of, you know, someone, you know, belting out a big song and and spitting into the audience. That's it's a challenge, and the people in the pit more than any, and it is close and it's tight down there. So I think I know Local 802, the AFM, the Musicians Union, together with Equity, SAG-AFTRA, the IA, they're all looking at how to keep everybody safe inside the theater.
Yeah. Again, it's that double, the dual sword. What am I trying to say? The double-edged sword of liveness. You know, we didn't worry about this stuff before. You know, I mean, before it was almost a joke when you'd go to the theater and everybody was coughing. I mean, not a joke; it was annoying. But you'd hear it and you'd be like, "Oh, geez, everybody who needed to cough came tonight." You know.
Yeah, no, it was annoying. Now it's dangerous, and we all feel danger. But we have to remember also in Shakespeare's day, you know, epidemics closed down their theaters on a regular basis, whether it was the Black Death or whatever. So there's always been, and the experience we're having now with this horrible pandemic and how it's changing and evolving, and we're not quite sure what's going to happen next. We can look back in time and look at other pandemics, you know, and other horrible things that, you know, have made the world an unsafe place. And so, and again, I don't want to be Pollyannish, but I think that, you know, I think that our understanding of good health and public health will improve the common experience, you know, and hopefully make us all healthier after a terrible period of time. We know that there's going to be at least by, even the federal government says by September or October 1st, there'll be more than 200,000 deaths to the coronavirus. It's an awful lot of people. And we don't know the impact of spread of the virus following the protests and the uprising and rallies and stadium. You know, we just don't know what the long-term impact will be. And for me, that's what frightens me the most, is the unknown. Having said that, people in the show business are incredibly resourceful, and producers have forever known how to turn a dime, you know, make a nickel, a dime, a quarter, whatever. So I have a feeling that we're all going to figure this out and move forward in a very productive way. And
I think, if not, I totally agree with all that, and it's inspiring to hear, and given all the death and the grief that results from this horrible disease, and the anger and the outrage about our political problems and our social injustice problems, theater and all this damned isolation that we have to live with right now, I think that theater is going to be a place that people will be very happy to go back to, because they get to be together, and the theater is a place where we can talk about these things as well.
I remember after 9/11, and Broadway was closed for 3 days, and we were doing a one-night-only big benefit of Dreamgirls. And I remember Audra McDonald not wanting to fly, but taking a bus across the country so she could be there on the first major event on Broadway after 9/11. Because we talked to the cast about canceling, postponing. Everyone wanted to get back to bring Broadway back. It was thrilling. I have a feeling that people will be very excited in the community and outside the community to get back into a really joyful spot. So let's hope that happens. But again, let's keep our pedal to the metal in every which way. Make sure that we're as safe as can be. Making sure we're protecting ourselves and the people we're with, and making sure we're making smart decisions about the future. And if that means staying away a little longer, I'm sure that decision will be made collectively.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Joe Benincasa. Thank you for talking today, and thank the Actors Fund for all the great work that it does.
Well, thanks for having me today. It's great to talk to everybody, and thank you for the National Arts Club for making this possible. And I'm very proud that the National Arts Club will be honoring the Actors Fund. Maybe we'll do it all together at some point down the road. But Brian Stokes Mitchell and I and all of our trustees are very proud to be accepting this honor.
Yeah, and I also would like to thank the Observer for continuing to publish the work of a theater critic. So I'll keep opining as long as you keep publishing.
Okay, and if you want to, and in 100 years when you want to move into the Actors Fund residence in Englewood, on your application just put actor first, okay?
Yeah, 100 or 5 years. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
I guess that's it. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.